Joining me here today, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, CMD at Biocon, and right after that conversation, we'll get an analyst perspective from Praful Bora of Nirmal Bang. Very good afternoon to both of you. Thanks for coming in. Ma'am, let me start with you. Just want to understand from you whether there is any significant difference in what was talked about earlier and what's been decided now, simple average versus weighted average. From an industry standpoint, is the net impact more or less the same?
I personally believe that the original idea of going in with a weighted average was far more, fair and realistic as a policy than the simple average that is being mooted today. And I think it's almost like a compromise that the group of ministers is trying to have with the finance minister's comments that he did not agree with the weighted average pricing mechanism. To me, first and foremost, the biggest problem I have is that the government seems to confuse its social objectives with, market economics of the pharmaceutical industry. The government needs to understand that it should focus on providing universal health care, and in that there are several mechanisms available to the government to make sure that drug prices are at their lowest. This is already happening in many state governments like Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Kerala, Karnataka and elsewhere. I don't see why we have to now start further, shrinking, prices through other mechanisms such as what is being suggested today, because they are only ending up devaluing this very important sector. I think the government has abdicated its responsibility of providing healthcare to its citizens, and it is trying to basically pass this responsibility on to Indian industry. Indian industry needs to invest in its sector, it needs to compete globally, it needs to build scale, because this is one sector that has a huge potential of becoming a very large provider of drugs to the world markets. Apart from it, it has a huge opportunity of creating a very large manufacturing base. And I think the government, in its skewed wisdom, is actually, devaluing this sector and making it fiscally challenged in terms of how it should go about these global opportunities. I think the objectivity is not very clear, and people who are going about, doing whatever they need to in drug pricing have not sit down and had a consultative process with all the stakeholders.
Ma'am, absolutely point taken. But, if the idea was to soften prices, I want, to get a couple of specific questions there. A, do you see this having an impact in terms of softening prices? And the other thing is that they're talking about formulations of these 348 drugs to be brought under the price net as well. And I think that's, while there's some ambiguity there, but that would be the real negative, I understand, for the industry standpoint?
Yes, I think, it will soften the prices, but at what cost? I mean, we are already seeing that we are under a lot of challenge from Chinese manufacturers. We know that many drugs have stopped being manufactured in India because it is just not, cost effective for Indian companies to manufacture these drugs. We are now importing these drugs from countries like China. So, is the government really looking at this? Yesterday we had another absurd, move coming from the Price Control Authority, where a ceiling price, a dual ceiling price was arrived at by NPPA, one for domestic manufacturers, one for, foreign companies. This is absurd. What are they trying to do? They're trying to, kill Indian industry. I mean, are you trying to say it's better to import insulin than to manufacture it locally? Are they trying to tell Biocon, it's better for you to import your insulins from your Malaysian facilities rather than sell it from your Indian facility? I think there is a lot of, misobjectivity, misinformation, and I think the government is not doing what it should do in a consultative way and in an informed way and in an objective way.
And I'm glad you brought that up, ma'am, because I was going to bring that in again. So, whether you look at that insulin-specific case where, your company has a direct stake in that decision, or you look at this larger decision, are we going to be in a scenario where, companies will be more and more focused on the export markets rather than look at the domestic market where, because of these price controls, I guess profitability will be under question?
I think, the government needs to look at this sector as a very important sector. Drugs today only constitute less than 15% of healthcare spends. Now, where is the price control on other aspects of that 85%? Are you going to start controlling hospital costs? Are you going to start controlling doctors' fees? Are you going to start controlling diagnostic centers? It makes no sense. It is a soft target. The drug industry is a soft target, and that's all the government has gone after. To me, the government is being very irresponsible. They are not looking at this, this pricing aspect in a holistic sense. There are several, mechanisms available to the government in terms of bulk procurement, tendering and what have you to bring down drug prices. I don't see why they are making such a political hoo-ha about this whole drug pricing issue. It suits them politically, but I can tell you that from a, economic and business standpoints, they are devaluing this sector.
Ma'am, just a last question, if I can ask for a specific, Biocon-related impact, particularly of that insulin decision, actually, yesterday's insulin decision. How are you going to approach that, ma'am? What is it going to mean for Biocon?
Well, we are certainly going to make sure that we enforce a level playing field. This is ridiculous. No country in the world disadvantages its domestic companies. This is absurd. We want a weighted average price ceiling for insulins, period. We are not going to tolerate and accept premium pricing for multinational and imported insulins. Even imported insulins coming from China are enjoying a higher price than Indian insulins. This is absurd. I think the National Price Control Authority needs to look at the way it is arriving at these decisions and, rolling out orders which are totally against national interests.
All right, ma'am, we'll see how that plays out. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your time today and appreciate you giving your candid comments on this issue. Very important from a national perspective, not just an industry perspective.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.